The relentless clang of the antique bell tower at Midtown University was the soundtrack to my academic life. It chimed every hour, a constant, proud reminder of the tradition and intellectual rigor I had spent 2 decades embodying. I was 58 years old, a woman who believed deeply in the power of history, not just as a subject of study, but as a framework for understanding human behavior. I was Professor Evelyn Marsh, the chair of the Medieval History Department, and the recently appointed director of the university's prestigious Digital Archives project. This project, a massive $20 million undertaking to digitize the entire collection of rare European manuscripts, was the culmination of my career, securing my academic legacy and my eventual transition into a well-funded, dignified retirement. The control over this project and its funds was the ultimate trust placed in me by the university's Board of Regents. The man who shattered that trust and turned my life into a spectacle of ruin was Dr. Charles Grant. Charles was my protégé, my former student, whom I had personally mentored through his doctorate and hired onto my faculty. He was 30 years younger than me, brilliant, charismatic, and possessed a political instinct I willfully ignored. I saw him as the natural successor to my chair, the younger mind who would carry the department forward. I treated him like a son, giving him unprecedented access to the Archives project's proprietary software, a complex, secure indexing system I had designed, under the explicit understanding that he would manage the operational rollout, while I managed the intellectual and financial oversight. My trust in him was absolute, blinding me to the ambition that curdled into malice. The betrayal was not an accident. It was a surgical, premeditated strike, executed while I was at my most vulnerable. In November 2022, I suffered a severe cycling accident that required emergency surgery and left me confined to my home for 4 months of difficult recovery. Charles visited me, bringing flowers and whispered assurances that he was holding the fort and protecting my project. I, drugged in pain and focused on physical survival, gratefully gave him temporary, full administrative and financial signatory power over the Archives project accounts. That signature was the key to my eventual professional execution. Charles used the 4 months of my absence to methodically dismantle my career. He didn't just steal the money, he committed a profound, multi-layered betrayal of intellectual and financial trust. He systematically diverted $4 million of the project's endowment into a labyrinth of external consulting firms. Firms, I later discovered, he secretly controlled, falsely billing the money as critical software upgrades and off-site data redundancy. But his true malice was directed at my reputation. He deliberately corrupted the core indexing system I designed, introducing minor, subtle, but ultimately catastrophic errors that compromised the security of the entire digital archive. He then leaked anonymous information to the university board, suggesting that I, Professor Evelyn Marsh, had been engaged in gross financial mismanagement and had designed a fundamentally flawed, insecure indexing system that endangered the entire multi-million-dollar archive. He positioned himself, the loyal protégé, as the brilliant mind who had uncovered the security flaw and saved the remaining endowment. The resulting internal audit, initiated while I was still bedridden, was relentless and entirely controlled by the narrative Charles created. The board, panicked by the potential security breach and the missing funds, saw Charles as the hero and me as the liability. I was stripped of my professorship and my director title, then fired for gross financial negligence and professional incompetence. The humiliation was complete. I lost my career, my retirement, and my life's work, all while Charles Grant, the smiling hero, was appointed the new, prestigious director of the Archives project and the interim department chair. He betrayed me in front of the entire academic community, smiling as he accepted the mantle of my power. The faculty, the students, even my closest colleagues, all believed the narrative. The great Professor Marsh had become incompetent, corrupt, and a liability. They mocked me when I fell, whispering about my hubris and failure to adapt. But as I watched the news report detailing Charles's heroic rise, a strange calm settled over me. I smiled too, not in defeat, but in a cold, quiet realization. Revenge always tastes better served cold, and I was about to spend years ensuring his meal was frozen solid. The immediate descent into professional oblivion was brutal. The academic world, small and judgmental, closed ranks instantly. The narrative Charles created, the image of the financially reckless, digitally incompetent professor, preceded me everywhere. I was toxic. Every attempt to secure a consulting job, a fellowship, or even a basic adjunct position failed, shut down by the whispered warnings from Midtown University, orchestrated by Charles. I lost my faculty housing, sold my remaining assets, and relocated to a tiny, obscure apartment in New Haven, Connecticut, where no one knew the disgraced name, Evelyn Marsh. My forced isolation was intense, a cold, empty void after decades of intellectual engagement. Yet, it was in this very void that my scientific mind began to analyze the problem of Charles Grant with clinical, unyielding precision. Charles's assumption that the fall from power would leave me broken and obsessed with temporary emotional retribution was his critical, fatal mistake. He forgot that my entire life was a study of historical patterns, of long-term causality, and of the power of buried evidence. I wasn't going to fight a legal battle I couldn't afford. I was going to fight a forensic war on the very code he corrupted and the financial trail he thought he erased. My purpose was singular: to prove that Charles's current success was built on systemic fraud that endangered the entire archive project, ensuring his ruin was absolute and irreversible. My primary weapon was the indexing software I designed for the Digital Archives project. I knew every line of code, every security protocol, every vulnerability I intentionally left open for my own administrative access. Charles had introduced minor, subtle, but catastrophic errors to compromise the archive's security, but I was certain he had done so sloppily, leaving a clear, traceable path, a digital fingerprint, back to his login credentials. The errors he introduced weren't random. They were designed to create plausible deniability while maximizing fear among the board members. I needed to find the original, clean version of the code and compare it to the corrupted version, exposing the precise moment and user ID when the malicious code was injected. I reached out to Dr. Lena Wu, a former graduate student now running a highly specialized digital forensics firm in Silicon Valley. Lena owed me a profound debt of gratitude. I had saved her from a crippling academic failure years ago, but I didn't rely on sentiment. I presented her with the complex problem: finding a specific malicious code injection within a multi-million-line codebase, a codebase protected by the security protocols of a major university. Lena was fascinated by the sheer technical challenge. My specific guidance, my knowledge of the proprietary indexing methodology, was the necessary key. I instructed her to focus her penetration test on the archival server's metadata logs, the ghost files that track user activity even after main files are deleted or altered. Charles is political, Lena. He's not technical. He didn't write the bad code, he injected it. We need the timestamp and the IP address of the injection, not the code itself. My new life became a solitary, obsessive dive into data. I spent months working remotely with Lena, meticulously comparing the clean, archived versions of the indexing system with the corrupted versions Charles was now using. I used my deep knowledge of cryptography and archival sequencing to guide Lena's team through the labyrinthine digital architecture. My forced retirement, the silence that was meant to be my prison, became my laboratory. I was no longer fighting for a title. I was fighting for the objective, undeniable truth of my invention and my integrity. The data trail was weak, but my relentless focus was not. I was no longer the heartbroken professor. I was the digital archaeologist of Charles Grant's ruin, searching for the single, unassailable piece of evidence that would prove his systemic fraud and complete incompetence. I know this might just be a voice in your ear, but if you've ever felt the absolute paralyzing cold of professional exile or fought to reclaim the truth of your work when your reputation was destroyed, you belong right here. We are a community built on the bedrock of unyielding evidence, where patience is our greatest weapon. Every time you hit that subscribe button, you are casting a vote for meticulous truth and the power of the overlooked individual. And please, tell me in the comments below, what is the one piece of evidence you know exists that could completely change your personal narrative? Your stories are the fuel that keeps this channel dedicated to the quiet, victorious battles of evidence and integrity. Thank you for being here. The meticulous, often frustrating work with Lena Wu's forensics firm continued for nearly a year. The university's security system was indeed robust, but Charles's execution was, as I suspected, catastrophically sloppy. He had focused entirely on altering the public-facing and easily audited files, neglecting the deep, decentralized transaction logs mandated by federal archival regulations, the very logs that Lena specialized in recovering. We were hunting for a ghost, but my knowledge of the system's skeleton, its dependencies and archival redundancy, was the perfect guide. I knew the malicious code had to have been injected during a period of high network traffic to disguise the data spike, narrowing Lena's search from months to weeks. The moment of the digital strike was an all-night session, culminating in a single devastating notification on my screen. Lena's team had successfully isolated the malicious code injection point. The log revealed a specific IP address registered to Charles Grant's personal residence, a precise timestamp in the early hours of December 14th, and critically, the user ID of C. Grant Admin, a privileged ID that Charles had created for himself during my recovery. The malicious code, disguised as a necessary patch, was a simple but devastating piece of programming designed to allow external, untraceable access to the archive's most sensitive manuscripts, proving that the security flaw was not an error, but a deliberate act of sabotage and financial espionage. The evidence was absolute. It proved 3 unassailable facts. Charles Grant stole $4 million by falsifying software upgrades. He intentionally compromised the archive's security to enable espionage, and his claims about my incompetent design were a malicious, fabricated cover-up. This was not just grounds for firing. This was grounds for federal wire fraud and computer crime charges. But I knew that taking this evidence directly to the university board would lead to a closed-door settlement, protecting the university's reputation and denying me the public vindication I desperately craved. My revenge had to be public, absolute, and focused on his entire academic existence. My strategy expanded immediately. I needed to move beyond the internal fraud and attack Charles on the very stage he had used to betray me: academic credibility. I knew Charles's doctoral dissertation, which he had presented during my tenure, contained significant, subtle plagiarism. I had chosen to ignore it years ago, protecting my protégé from potential ruin. Now, that former forgiveness would become his final downfall. I used my access to academic databases to cross-reference his dissertation against the works of 3 obscure European scholars, work he assumed would never be indexed in English. The digital evidence confirmed my memory. Over 40 pages of his dissertation were lifted wholesale, without citation, a clear violation of academic integrity policy, a policy I myself had helped draft. I now possessed 2 unassailable dossiers: the financial digital fraud dossier, the code injection proof, and the academic fraud dossier, the doctoral plagiarism proof. I didn't file them with the university. Instead, I contacted a renowned academic ethics lawyer, Mr. Thomas Klein, a different Thomas Klein, specializing in intellectual property defense, and presented him with the entire, devastating package. Thomas was initially stunned, then energized by the sheer magnitude of the corruption. "Professor Marsh," he said, his voice quiet with professional realization, "you didn't just collect evidence. You built a time bomb. We will not use this to get your job back. We will use this to strip him of his doctorate, his professorship, his director title, and his entire professional future, all simultaneously. We will attack the foundation of his career, his academic honor." The legal offensive against Dr. Charles Grant began with surgical precision. Instead of filing against the university, which would trigger a lengthy internal defense, Thomas Klein filed a devastating public complaint directly with the State Attorney General's office and the university's Faculty Senate Judicial Committee. The complaint detailed the computer crime, wire fraud, and misuse of public funds, $4 million of the endowment, through Charles's malicious code injection and falsified billing, backed by Lena Wu's forensic report and my affidavit. This forced a criminal and judicial investigation, bypassing the administrative obfuscation the board preferred. The moment the complaints were publicly filed, the academic community erupted. The news was no longer about the incompetent Professor Marsh, but about the corrupt Director Grant facing criminal charges. The university, desperate to contain the scandal and protect its state funding, immediately placed Charles on indefinite administrative leave, stripping him of his director title and department chair. He was confined to his home, his influence gone overnight. The faculty who had mocked me were now quietly ashamed, realizing the devastating truth of Charles's lies. My focus remained absolute. While the state attorney began its criminal investigation based on the financial and digital fraud, Thomas Klein proceeded with the Faculty Senate Judicial Committee hearing on the academic fraud dossier. The committee hearing, held in closed chambers, was the emotional reckoning I craved. I testified, not about the money, but about the profound violation of trust, the deliberate plagiarism that formed the foundation of his entire career. I presented the 4 separate comparisons of his dissertation and the European manuscripts, proving the depth of his ethical decay. The faculty who had once promoted him now sat in judgment. The final devastating evidence came from a source Charles had deliberately destroyed: Dr. Lena Wu's original code. Thomas Klein arranged a public demonstration for the Faculty Senate, showing the side-by-side comparison of my clean indexing code and Charles's corrupted version. The presentation was clear. Charles had not fixed a flaw. He had introduced a Trojan horse into the system, proven by the Sea Grant admin ID. The Faculty Senate, witnessing the unassailable proof of his malicious intent and his foundational dishonesty, moved swiftly and unanimously. The verdict was absolute. Dr. Charles Grant was guilty of egregious academic fraud and professional misconduct. The consequence was the most satisfying form of professional annihilation. The Faculty Senate recommended 2 absolute actions: immediate termination from the university and a formal request to the accrediting body to permanently revoke his doctorate, the very degree that served as the foundation for his entire career. Charles Grant, the man who erased my reputation, was now facing the total erasure of his academic existence. He was stripped of his titles, his job, and soon, his foundational degree. His perfect world was collapsing, meticulously engineered by the victim he thought was broken forever. The verdict from the Faculty Senate was the final, structural collapse of Charles Grant's life. The university, facing the imminent criminal investigation by the state attorney and the profound embarrassment of promoting a doctoral fraud, acted with ruthless efficiency. Charles was formally terminated, his office cleaned out, his salary permanently revoked. The official request to revoke his doctorate was immediately filed. He was completely exiled, becoming a professional pariah overnight. The public exposure was relentless, cementing my status as the vindicated victim and Charles's as the academic criminal. The final decisive confrontation came during the mandatory settlement conference, a last-ditch effort by Charles's defense attorney to mitigate his civil and criminal damages before the state attorney filed formal charges. The meeting was held in a secure, sterile conference room far from Midtown University. I sat across the table from Charles, who looked haggard, his expensive suit rumpled, his eyes devoid of their former charm. His lawyer, a desperate man, laid out a plea: a small private financial settlement for me in exchange for my withdrawal of the formal complaints to the state attorney and the AAHS. I listened to Charles's voice, a pathetic, broken whisper, as he pleaded, "Evelyn, please. I know I was wrong. I was scared of the audit. I needed the money. If I lose the doctorate, I lose everything. I can never teach again. You've won. You've proven your point. Please, show some mercy. You have your job back, your honor. Just let me keep my degree." He was begging, not for forgiveness, but for the one thing he valued most, the pretense of intellectual authority. I looked at him, the man who had brought me flowers while plotting my professional death, and I felt a cold, absolute detachment. I spoke, my voice low and unyielding. "I don't want your money, Charles, and I don't want the job you poisoned. I want the truth. You spent 4 months of my recovery plotting my professional death, using a false narrative to commit computer fraud and grand larceny. You destroyed the integrity of the archives project and the honor of this faculty by building your career on plagiarism. You took my reputation. Now, I am simply taking the truth back." I slid 2 documents across the table: the irrevocable withdrawal of my suit against the university, securing my financial settlement, and crucially, a full notarized confession I had prepared, detailing his fraud, his plagiarism, and his malicious code injection. You will sign this confession publicly, or I will hand the full, unedited forensic report to the state attorney tomorrow, guaranteeing you 10 years in federal prison. The degree is gone, Charles. You lost it the day you chose greed over honor. He stared at the confession, his hands trembling. He knew the terms were absolute. He picked up the pen and, with a shaky hand, signed his total ruin. The victory was complete. Wow, you've stayed with me through the absolute core of this intellectual war, the fight for truth against the darkest form of academic corruption. If you felt that immense, cold surge of satisfaction when the evidence finally trapped the villain, you know why this story matters. This community is built on the shared belief that integrity and meticulous truth will always defeat the smiling lie. If you haven't already, please take a moment to gently tap that subscribe button and affirm the power of the evidence. And now, my deepest, most heartfelt invitation. Think about the single most significant betrayal of trust you have ever faced. Share the lesson you learned about character and integrity in the comments below. Your honesty and courage are the foundation of this channel. Also, please suggest any deeply emotional, human-focused themes you want to see explored next. Thank you for being a genuine, authentic part of this fight. The signing of the public confession marked the total and irrevocable end of Dr. Charles Grant's career. His act of self-immolation was meticulous and complete. The confession, immediately released by my legal team, became the academic scandal of the decade. It detailed his financial malfeasance, his malicious computer crime, and most damningly, the wholesale plagiarism of his doctoral dissertation. The university, already facing the humiliation of promoting a fraud, used the public confession as justification to accelerate their actions. The state attorney, presented with the signed confession, confirmed that Charles would face a civil forfeiture suit to recover the misused funds, but opted not to pursue the criminal charges, satisfied that the public and professional consequence was severe and absolute. My own life began its breathtaking ascent from the ashes. I did not take the university's offer to restore my chair position. The environment was toxic, and my true purpose was now clear. I used the substantial financial settlement from the university, damages for wrongful termination and intellectual property rights, to found the Marsh Institute for Archival Integrity. This was not a department. It was a private, independent, and immensely powerful consulting firm dedicated to performing forensic digital audits for institutions facing complex, internal fraud and data theft. The Institute's mission was clear: to protect the intellectual heart of academia from the kind of corruption Charles Grant embodied. My first official act as director of the Marsh Institute was to personally appear before the AAHS, American Academy of Historical Sciences, presenting the comprehensive evidence of Charles's plagiarism and professional fraud. I didn't seek revenge, I sought systemic justice. The AAHS, based on the irrefutable evidence of the 7 years of methodical documentation I had collected, formally and publicly revoked Charles Grant's professional certifications and barred him from ever holding an academic position or publishing in any accredited journal. The final, absolute professional annihilation. Charles Grant, the smiling hero, was reduced to a public villain, his name a permanent synonym for academic fraud. The mockery that had been directed at me was now transferred entirely to him. He was permanently exiled from the only world he had ever known. His life's work, the fraudulent reputation, completely dismantled by the quiet, meticulous revenge of the woman he thought was broken forever. The Marsh Institute for Archival Integrity quickly became a powerhouse. My name, once toxic, was now a powerful brand synonymous with uncompromising ethical standards and forensic excellence. Universities and institutions, terrified of harboring their own Charles Grant, flocked to the Institute, desperate for my proprietary auditing methodologies. My forced retirement was not a quiet end. It was the explosive launch of a new, influential career, built entirely on the ruins of the betrayal. I no longer worked in the stale air of academia. I worked in the dynamic, high-stakes environment of institutional integrity defense. I hired Lena Wu's entire forensics team, transforming the Institute into a formidable, data-driven entity. I spent my days flying to major institutions, training their oversight boards, and personally directing forensic audits. I had achieved the one goal Charles had blocked: systemic reform. I wasn't just observing history, I was actively shaping the history of institutional ethics. The financial recovery was immense, but the emotional recovery was the true prize. The shame was gone, replaced by the profound, quiet satisfaction of purpose. I had successfully transformed a deep, personal wound into a massive societal benefit. The Institute's work ensured that young, brilliant scholars would never again suffer the theft and coercion that nearly destroyed me. My legacy was no longer the fate of a few ancient manuscripts. It was the integrity of the entire archival process. Charles Grant, meanwhile, was completely irrelevant. The university had successfully sued him to recover the misused funds, stripping him of the last of his assets. He was barred from the profession, his doctorate permanently revoked. I heard reports years later that he was working odd menial jobs in a remote state, desperate to escape the shadow of his own name. He became the ultimate embodiment of his own malice, a professional ghost, hiding from the truth he had created, condemned to permanent obscurity by the sheer force of the evidence I collected. The ensuing years solidified my new life as a powerful, independent force. The Marsh Institute became a global benchmark, its methodologies cited in federal archiving policy. I had successfully replaced the chaotic political grind of academia with the pure, objective clarity of forensic investigation. My work was clean, focused, and unassailably ethical. I often thought about the relentless mockery I faced when I was forced out, the faculty who whispered that I was incompetent and past my prime. I had proved them all wrong, using their skepticism as fuel to build an empire that now dictated the rules of their own intellectual game. My final act of professional reclamation was the full public release of the Digital Archives project. The university, having settled with me, granted me the final copyright and publishing authority. I personally oversaw the public launch, ensuring that the archive, my archive, was finally shared with the world, stamped with the singular, unassailable credit, Professor Evelyn Marsh, founder and principal architect. The public recognition was overwhelming, cementing my reputation as a figure of towering intellectual and moral strength. I never sought another relationship, personal or professional, that was not built on complete transparency. The years of emotional isolation had taught me the necessity of fierce independence. My life became a model of resilience through evidence, a living testament that the quiet, meticulous mind is often the most dangerous opponent when provoked. I had transformed the darkest period of my life into the most purposeful, proving that betrayal, once defeated, can become the foundation for ultimate success. The memory of Charles Grant, the antagonist, faded into irrelevance. His public disgrace was absolute. His professional existence was terminated. His story became a cautionary tale I used in my institute seminars. The lie may grant you a temporary stage, but the truth will build the scaffold for your final performance. I had won the war, not by shouting, but by patiently collecting the digital truth, ensuring his ruin was as meticulously documented as any historical manuscript. The years rolled by, marked by the ongoing success of the Institute and the profound, quiet joy of my unburdened life. The anger that fueled the initial revenge dissipated, replaced by a deep, philosophical calm. I realized that my most important victory was not external, but internal. I had reclaimed my faith in the objective power of truth. Charles Grant's malice had forced me to test that faith to its absolute limit, and it had survived, stronger than ever. I received one final profound piece of correspondence exactly 6 years after the formal revocation of his doctorate. It was a thick, handwritten letter, mailed anonymously to the Marsh Institute's general address. The handwriting, though labored, was unmistakably Charles Grant's. It wasn't an apology, but a raw, rambling confession, devoid of all his former political polish. Evelyn, I saw the announcement for the new archival wing. You won. I lost my degree, my name, my children's respect, everything. I realize now that you never fought for revenge. You fought for the code. You fought for the truth of the system. I only saw dollar signs. I saw you as weak, but you were always the only one who truly understood how the system worked, and you used it to eliminate me. I am nothing. You are everything I pretended to be. I read the letter and felt a wave of profound, cold detachment. The man who had mocked me when I fell was finally acknowledging the complete, unassailable authority of my expertise. He wasn't begging for mercy. He was confirming the total, permanent success of my vengeance. He was condemned to eternal obscurity, haunted by the memory of the life he had stolen and the life I had successfully rebuilt. I filed the letter away, the final, authenticated document in the story of my professional resurrection. I stand now as the ultimate proof that an academic, a scholar, a quiet observer of history, can become the most powerful force for justice when provoked. I had transformed the quiet shame of my exile into the resounding authority of the Marsh Institute. The mockery stopped the day the truth was revealed, and my smile, which they dismissed as the nervous twitch of the disgraced, became the quiet, confident assurance of the victor. My life today is proof that an enemy's greatest malice can become the foundation for a greater, more resilient purpose. I stand here, not as the disgraced professor, but as Professor Evelyn Marsh, the revered director of the Marsh Institute, a woman who used forensic evidence to achieve absolute justice. Charles Grant betrayed me in front of everyone, smiling, and thought I would simply vanish. Instead, I spent years meticulously collecting the digital truth and burned his fraudulent empire down, ensuring his professional life remains a permanent, cautionary tale of ultimate failure. He mocked me when I fell, but I smiled, because revenge always tastes better served cold, delivered not by rage, but by the overwhelming, documented power of evidence. I rebuilt my life from ashes, using his malice as the blueprint for my greatest ethical achievement. The final lesson is this: do not fear the fall, fear the silence that follows, and use that silence as the laboratory to build your unassailable truth. The meticulous patience of a scholar, when turned to the task of justice, is the most formidable force in the world. I reclaimed my name, my work, and my peace, proving that the truth is the only legacy that cannot be stolen.